The news of Lily Mason's death spread across Earth's colonies like a wildfire. Within hours, every human diplomat in Imperial space received the same coded message. Come home now. On Earth, Admiral Susan Wright sat at the head of a large table, in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room was silent as the recording from New Hope played on the main screen. When it ended, showing Lily's small body in her mother's arms, several of the military officers had tears in their eyes. For 20 years, Admiral Wright said quietly, we have played weak. We have bent to their rules. We have smiled and nodded while they pushed us around. All so they would never guess what we were building. She stood up, her uniform crisp and her gray hair pulled back tight. That ends today. General Peter Harris, head of ground forces, spoke up. Are we sure, Susan? Once we do this, there's no going back. Admiral Wright pointed to the frozen image of Lily's face. Would you like to tell her parents why we held back? No one spoke. Begin the launch sequence, she ordered. All ships, all stations, and get me the president. Across Earth's solar system, hidden bases came alive. On Mars, huge doors opened in what the Empire believed were simple mining operations. On Europa and Titan, energy readings spiked as advanced weapon systems powered up. In the asteroid belt, what appeared to be ordinary rocks split open to reveal fully armed battlecruisers. President Daniel Hayes was awakened at 3 a.m. by his security team. When he arrived in the Oval Office, Admiral Wright was waiting on the secure screen. Mr. President, Operation Prometheus has been activated, she reported. A human child was killed during an illegal Imperial inspection on New Hope Colony. Hayes sat heavily in his chair. They had planned for this possibility, but he had always hoped it would never happen. Show me. After watching the recording, Hayes signed the executive order that had been prepared years ago for this exact situation. With his signature, Earth officially declared war on the Galactic Empire. God help them, he said. They have no idea what's coming. In space, Commander Vexnar's ships hurriedly left New Hope's orbit. He had not expected the humans to react so strongly to one child's death. It was a miscalculation, but surely not a serious one. Earth was a minor power with outdated ships and limited reach. As his small fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, his sensor officer called out in alarm. Commander, multiple contacts appearing all around us. Where empty space had been moments before, now dozens of ships appeared. They were human in design, but unlike any Imperial intelligence had ever reported. Sleek, dark, and bristling with weapons. They surrounded the Imperial ships in a perfect sphere. A communication came through on all channels. A woman's voice, calm and cold. Imperial vessels. This is Admiral Susan Wright of the Earth Defense Force. Your actions on New Hope Colony constitute an act of war against humanity. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Vexnar laughed. This is some kind of trick. Earth has no such fleet. In response, a massive ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in front of his vessel. It was at least 5 times larger than his command ship, with the name Retribution painted in bold letters on its side. That is no trick, Commander, Admiral Wright said. That is the consequence of killing our children. Vexnar ordered his ships to fire, but their energy weapons seemed to dissolve harmlessly against the Earth vessel's shields. The return fire was devastating. 2 of his escort ships exploded instantly. His own ship rocked violently as systems failed across the board. Impossible, he whispered, watching as his supposedly superior technology failed against weapons the Empire had never seen before. His ship was captured instead of destroyed. As Earth Marines boarded and took control, Vexnar realized the terrible truth. Humans had been hiding their true capabilities all along. On the Imperial capital world of Zolthor Prime, Emperor Zorkath received the news of the incident with annoyance. One minor border commander exceeded his authority, he told his advisors. Send a formal apology to Earth and increase our patrols in that sector. But before the message could be sent, reports began flooding in from across the Empire. Earth. Ships were appearing everywhere, attacking Imperial bases and shipyards with overwhelming force. Human colonies that had seemed defenseless were suddenly revealing massive hidden defenses. How is this possible? The Emperor demanded. Our intelligence said they were at least a century behind our technology. Imperial strategist Corvex, who had long warned against underestimating humans, stepped forward. They deceived us, Your Majesty. Everything they showed us was a carefully crafted illusion. On New Hope Colony, things were changing rapidly. Underground bunkers opened up, revealing stockpiles of advanced weapons and medical supplies. Civilian buildings reconfigured, armor plating sliding into place over vulnerable walls and windows. Captain Miller helped organize the colony's transformation while also caring for the Mason family. Lily's parents, Greg and Maria, sat in shock as their daughter's body was prepared for burial. Sam, only 8 years old, didn't fully understand why his sister wasn't coming back. Miller's communicator buzzed. It was Admiral Wright. "How are things there, John?" she asked. "We're secure now," he reported. "The defense systems are fully operational, but the cost—" He looked over at the grieving family. "I know," Wright said softly, "but her death won't be for nothing. The Empire is about to learn what happens when you push humans too far." On Earth, Dr. Alan Grant worked around the clock in his laboratory beneath the Pacific Ocean. As chief weapons scientist, he was responsible for deploying technologies that had been developed in secret for decades. "The quantum disruptors are online," he reported to Admiral Wright. "All ships can now bypass Imperial shields completely." Wright nodded on the screen. "And the phase shift drives?" "Fully operational. Our ships can appear anywhere in Imperial space without warning." "Good," Wright said. "Begin Phase 1. Phase 1 targeted the Empire's ability to communicate and coordinate. Earth ships appeared simultaneously at 57 key relay stations throughout Imperial space. The attacks were precise and overwhelming. Lieutenant Steve Rodriguez led the assault on the main communication hub in the Arcturus sector. His small team of Special Forces operatives used stealth technology to board the station undetected. "Remember," he told his team, "we need the control codes intact. Take prisoners when possible." The operation took exactly 12 minutes. When it was over, Rodriguez had full control of the hub and its databases. Similar successes across Imperial space gave Earth forces the ability to listen to all Imperial communications and insert false messages when needed. Back on Zalthor Prime, the Emperor was furious. Reports of attacks were coming in faster than his staff could process them. The Imperial Home Fleet, the largest concentration of military might in the galaxy, was ordered to crush the human uprising. High Commander Zulvar, the Emperor's most trusted military leader, assembled over 200 capital ships. "These humans have some new toys," he told his captains, "but they cannot stand against the full might of the Empire." The Imperial fleet moved toward the human colony of Arcturus IV, expecting to find a small Earth defensive force. Instead, they found Admiral Wright's main battle group waiting for them. The Earth ships were fewer in number but equipped with technology the Empire had never encountered. As the battle began, Imperial weapons found themselves firing at empty space as Earth vessels seemed to shift positions instantly. Meanwhile, Earth's weapons cut through Imperial shields as if they weren't there. Captain Nicole White commanded the stealth cruiser Harbinger during the battle. Her ship slipped undetected through the Imperial formation, deploying quantum disruptors that disabled enemy vessels without destroying them. "Target their engines and weapons only," she ordered her crew. "We want prisoners and intelligence, not a massacre." By the end of the engagement, 30 Imperial capital ships had been destroyed or captured. The rest fled in disarray. The Empire had not suffered such a defeat in over 300 years. On Earth, President Hayes addressed the United Nations. Representatives from all human colonies attended via secure quantum links. "For too long, we have hidden our strength," he said. "For too long, we have endured the Empire's contempt. We sought peace, but they brought war to our doorstep. They killed our children." He paused, his voice growing firm. "Now they will learn that humanity is not to be trifled with." The speech was translated and broadcast across all galactic channels. Attached to it was the recording of Lily's death, along with evidence of other Imperial abuses that had been documented over the years. Throughout the Empire, citizens watched in shock. Many had never questioned their government's portrayal of humans as a primitive, barely spacefaring species. Now they were witnessing the truth and wondering what other lies they had been told. The sun rose slowly over the rolling hills of New Hope Colony. Lily Mason walked through the tall grass, her small hand holding tight to her younger brother Sam's sleeve. They were looking for sky stones that sometimes fell during the night. Their mother always said to be back for breakfast, but the morning was so pretty that Lily wanted to find just one more special stone. "Look, Lily," Sam pointed to the sky. "Something big is coming." Lily looked up and saw 3 dark shapes cutting through the clouds. They were not like the supply ships that came every month. These were sharper, with angles that reminded her of the pictures of sharks in her school books. "Those are Imperial ships," she said, feeling a strange mix of worry and excitement. The Galactic Empire, or the Confederation of Allied Worlds as they called themselves, rarely visited small colonies, like New Hope. "We should go tell Mom and Dad." As they ran back to the settlement, a siren began to wail. By the time they reached the main square, most of the 500 colonists were already gathering. Dad was there with his farming tools still in hand, and Mom rushed over to grab both children. "Stay close," she whispered, hugging them tight. Captain John Miller stood on the steps of the colony hall. As Earth's diplomatic representative, he was the one who dealt with off-worlders. He looked nervous as the Imperial ships landed in the open field just outside the settlement. The largest ship opened and tall figures marched out in perfect lines. They wore armor that shined like oil on water, and their helmets had no openings for eyes, just smooth, reflective surfaces. At their head walked a Zalthori officer with red markings on his shoulders. "I am Commander Vexnar of the Imperial Inspection Fleet," the officer announced. His voice sounded strange through the translator, like rocks grinding together. "This colony has been selected for routine inspection. All residents will submit to questioning and allow full access to all buildings and systems." Captain Miller stepped forward. "Commander, with all due respect, Imperial law requires that colonies be given notice before inspections. We received no such notice." The commander's mouth parts twitched in what Lily thought might be a smile, but not a nice one. "New regulations. Immediate compliance is required." The adults began to whisper among themselves. Lily heard words like illegal and rights violation. Miller stood his ground. "I must insist on seeing the authorization. Under the Treaty of Proxima, human colonies are entitled—" "The treaty is no longer relevant," Vexnar cut him off. "The Empire has concerns about unauthorized technology development in this sector. Resistance will be considered admission of guilt." With a quick hand motion, the commander sent his soldiers forward. They pushed into the crowd, scanning people with humming devices. One grabbed Dad's arm when he tried to protest. "Stop this immediately," Miller shouted. "These are civilians." The commander ignored him. "Search the buildings, confiscate all communication, and defense systems." Lily watched as soldiers entered homes without permission. Some colonists tried to block their doors, but were shoved aside. When Mrs. Wilson from the school tried to stop a soldier from taking her computer, he hit her with the back of his hand, sending her to the ground. The crowd grew angry. Someone threw a rock that bounced harmlessly off a soldier's armor. In response, the soldiers drew their weapons, sleek rifles that glowed with blue energy. "This is your final warning," Vexnar announced. "Any further resistance will be met with appropriate force." Captain Miller raised his hands. "Everyone, please stay calm. We'll resolve this through proper channels." But the tension had already risen too high. Mr. Lee from the power plant pushed a soldier who was dragging his daughter toward a scanner. The soldier stumbled back, then raised his weapon. "No!" Captain Miller shouted, but it was too late. A flash of blue light hit Mr. Lee in the chest. He fell without a sound. The crowd screamed and began to scatter. "Hold your positions," Vexnar ordered his troops, but panic had already taken over. Lily felt her mother pulling her and Sam toward their house. Soldiers were firing now, not directly at people but over their heads, creating more fear. The blue energy bolts left scorched marks on buildings. They had almost reached their door when Lily heard Sam cry out. She turned to see her brother trip and fall. A soldier was approaching, weapon raised. Without thinking, Lily broke free from her mother's grip and ran to Sam. "Get away from him," she shouted, standing between the soldier and her brother. The soldier hesitated, then aimed his weapon at the ground near her feet, clearly intending just to scare her. But at that moment, Commander Vexnar shouted something in his own language. The soldier's weapon shifted upward. Lily saw the blue flash. It didn't hurt at first. It felt warm, then cold, then nothing at all. She heard her mother screaming. She felt strong arms lifting her. Through blurry eyes, she saw Captain Miller's face above her, his mouth moving, but the words sounded far away. "Stay with us, Lily. Help is coming." But Lily knew it wasn't. The colony's doctor couldn't fix this kind of wound. She tried to speak, to ask about Sam, but couldn't form the words. Her last thought was about the sky stone in her pocket. She had found a perfect one, just before the ships came, round and smooth with flecks of silver. She wanted to give it to Sam. Then, nothing. Captain Miller held the child's body as her mother collapsed beside them, her screams now silent sobs. The girl's father knelt nearby, cradling the younger brother who kept asking why Lily wouldn't wake. Up around them, other colonists were injured or hiding. The Imperial soldiers had formed a defensive circle around their commander, weapons still drawn but no longer firing. Vexnar approached slowly, his translator crackling. "The child's death is unfortunate. She should not have interfered with Imperial operations." Miller looked up, rage burning in his eyes. She was protecting her brother. She was 12 years old. "Regrettable," the commander said without any actual regret in his voice. "However, the inspection must continue." Miller gently placed Lily's body in her mother's arms and stood. "The inspection is over. You will leave New Hope immediately, or I will invoke Emergency Protocol 7. The commander laughed. "Your Earth protocols mean nothing here." Miller pulled a small device from his pocket. It had been disguised as a simple communication tool, but now its true nature was revealed. A direct quantum link to Earth Fleet Command. "This child died under my protection," Miller said, his voice cold and clear. "Every moment of this illegal action has been recorded and transmitted. Earth will not stand for this." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across the commander's face. "Your threats are empty. Earth has always yielded to Imperial authority." "Not anymore," Miller said, and pressed a button on the device. "Earth Fleet Command, this is Captain John Miller on New Hope Colony. We have a broken arrow situation. I repeat, broken arrow. A child is dead by Imperial fire, requesting immediate implementation of Operation Prometheus." The response came instantly, a woman's voice filled with controlled fury. "Confirmed, Captain Miller. Operation Prometheus is now active. Hold your position. Help is coming." As the transmission ended, the commander's translator picked up the exchange. His posture changed, becoming more rigid. "What is Operation Prometheus?" he demanded. Miller's smile was without warmth. "You're about to find out." 1 week into the war, the Imperial High Command was in chaos. Their carefully planned defense networks were falling apart as Earth forces seemed to appear everywhere at once. "They're not following any known military doctrine, High Commander," Zulvar complained to the Emperor. "They strike without warning, disable our ships rather than destroying them, and disappear before we can respond." Emperor Zorkath glared at the holographic map showing the rapidly changing front lines. "How are they moving so quickly? Our fastest ships take days to cross these distances. They appear to have developed some form of faster-than-light travel that doesn't use hyperspace lanes," an aide explained nervously. "Our sensors can't track them until they're already on top of us." Imperial strategist Corvex, who had been studying human history in detail, spoke up. "This is consistent with their past behavior on Earth. They often hide their true capabilities until forced to reveal them. Why? Why pretend to be weak?" the Emperor demanded. "To be underestimated," Corvex said simply, "just as we have done." Meanwhile, Admiral Wright directed Earth's forces from her flagship Retribution. The massive vessel held position near Jupiter, protected by layers of defenses that would have been unimaginable to outside observers just days earlier. "Status report," she ordered, As her staff gathered for the morning briefing, General Harris went first. Ground forces have secured footholds on 17 Imperial worlds. Resistance has been minimal, as we've focused on military targets and avoided civilian areas. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, recently promoted after his successful capture of the communications hub, reported next. Our intelligence network is fully operational. We're intercepting 92% of all Imperial communications and feeding false information to their fleet movements. And the prisoners? Wright asked. Over 20,000 so far, Harris answered. Most are being held on Europa. They're surprised by their treatment. Apparently the Empire told them we torture captives. Make sure they see that's not the case, Wright ordered. I want them sending messages home about how humans wage war. The meeting continued with updates on various operations. Earth's strategy was clear. Disable the Empire's ability to fight without causing unnecessary civilian casualties. It was a deliberate choice that stood in stark contrast to Imperial tactics. On New Hope Colony, Lily Mason's funeral was held 3 days after her death. The entire colony attended along with representatives from Earth's government. Captain Miller stood beside the family as the small coffin was lowered into the ground. I promise you, he told Greg and Maria Mason quietly, the people responsible will face justice. Greg Mason looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. Will it bring her back? No, Miller admitted. Nothing can do that, but we can make sure no other parent loses a child this way. After the funeral, Miller received new orders. He was being promoted to major and given command of a special operations unit. Their mission, capture Commander Vexnar and bring him to Earth to stand trial for Lily's death. Vexnar was currently being held on an Earth vessel, but Imperial forces were making repeated attempts to rescue him. The commander had become a symbol for both sides, of Imperial cruelty to humans and of human aggression to the Empire. Across the galaxy, the war expanded. Earth ships struck deep into Imperial territory, always with surgical precision. They targeted military installations, weapons factories, and command centers, but scrupulously avoided civilian casualties. This approach confused many Imperial citizens who had been told that humans were bloodthirsty savages. When Earth forces occupied the Imperial mining world of Tarsus II, local officials expected the worst. Instead, Captain Ben Willis, leading the occupation, established fair treatment protocols and even improved safety conditions in the mines. We're not here to hurt civilians, he explained to the bewildered planetary governor. Our quarrel is with your military and government, not your people. Word of this treatment spread, undermining Imperial propaganda. On some worlds, citizens began questioning their leaders' decisions. The Imperial resistance was still fierce, however. At the Battle of Orion's Belt, Earth forces faced a desperate Imperial counterattack. Captain Laura Franklin commanded the defense cruiser Guardian during the engagement. They're targeting our support ships, her tactical officer reported as Imperial vessels focused fire on the smaller Earth craft carrying medical supplies and evacuation transports. Interpose the Guardian between them and the medical ships, Franklin ordered without hesitation. Her ship took heavy damage absorbing the attack, but the medical vessels escaped. When rescue teams cut through the Guardian's damaged hull hours, later they found Franklin still on the bridge directing emergency operations despite severe injuries. Get my crew out first, she insisted as medics tried to move her. Her actions saved over 300 lives, and she was later awarded Earth's highest military honor. As the war entered its second week, the Imperial High Command attempted to regain the initiative. They gathered their remaining fleet strength for a massive assault on Earth's solar system. If they could strike at humanity's homeworld, perhaps they could force a negotiated peace. The plan might have worked, if not for Earth's intelligence network. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez's team intercepted the orders while they were still being drafted. They're planning to hit Sol's system with everything they have left, Rodriguez reported to Admiral Wright. 300 capital ships, arriving, from multiple vectors. Wright smiled grimly. Exactly as we predicted. Implement Operation Guillotine. Operation Guillotine was a trap of breathtaking scale. As the Imperial fleet approached Earth's solar system through hyperspace, They had no idea that human engineers had been quietly modifying the hyperspace lanes for years, building in vulnerabilities that could be activated when needed. Major Miller led a small team that infiltrated an Imperial navigation beacon, installing a device that would subtly alter the fleet's exit coordinates. "Sending confirmation," he reported as the final connections were made. "The package is delivered." Rodriguez monitored the Imperial fleet's progress from his intelligence hub. "They're committed to the jump now. No turning back." When the Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace, expecting to find themselves near Mars, they instead appeared scattered across a vast area of space, each ship isolated from the others, and waiting for them was the full might of Earth's home fleet. "Target there. Propulsion and weapon systems," Admiral Wright ordered. "Disable, don't destroy unless absolutely necessary." The battle that followed was brief and decisive. Without the ability to coordinate, the Imperial ships were easy prey for Earth's coordinated forces. Within hours, over 200 Imperial vessels had been captured intact, their crews taken prisoner. High Commander Zulvar, captured on his flagship, was brought before Admiral Wright. "Why?" he demanded. "Why are you taking prisoners instead of killing us? It's not efficient." Wright studied him coldly. "Because we're not you. Humanity fights when necessary, but we don't glorify killing." "Weakness," Zulvar spat. "No," Wright corrected him. "Strength. The strength to know when not to pull the trigger." The capture of the Imperial attack force marked a turning point in the war. The Empire had committed a large portion of its remaining military strength to the failed assault, leaving many of its worlds vulnerable. Earth's strategy shifted to Phase 2. Instead of focusing solely on military targets, they began dismantling the Empire's economic infrastructure. Key trade routes were blockaded. Resource extraction facilities were captured intact. The flow of critical materials to Imperial military factories slowed to a trickle. Major Ryan Phillips led the Earth assault on the shipyards of Proxima Centauri, a key Imperial construction facility. His forces used precision strikes to disable the yard's defenses without damaging the half-built ships. "We can use these," he told his engineering team as they secured the massive facility. "Repurpose them for our own needs." The Imperial defenders surrendered when they realized the humans weren't going to destroy the shipyards or kill the workers. One Imperial officer, watching as Earth troops provided medical care to injured colleagues, shook his head in confusion. "We were told you were animals," he said to Phillips. "That you would slaughter us all in revenge." Phillips looked at him steadily. "We're not seeking revenge, we're seeking justice. There's a difference." Back on Earth, President Hayes received regular updates on the war's progress. The human casualties were far lower than initially feared, thanks to their technological edge and the element of surprise. Still, each report of deaths weighed heavily on him. "Are we doing the right thing?" he asked his chief of staff, a woman named Olivia Green, who had lost a brother in an earlier Imperial incident that had been quietly covered up. "They've been killing us slowly for years," she replied, "picking us off colony by colony, testing our limits. If we hadn't responded now, there would just be more lilies." Hayes nodded slowly. "Ensure that all our forces understand the rules of engagement. We fight the military, not civilians. We disable rather than destroy when possible. We treat prisoners humanely. The moment we become like them, we've lost something more important than this war." As the third week of conflict began, cracks appeared in the Imperial power structure. 3 months into the war, the Galactic Empire was crumbling. What had begun as a human response to one child's death had evolved into a full-scale revolution across dozens of star systems. On the Imperial throne world of Zalthor Prime, Emperor, Zorkath faced the first serious challenge to his 3-century rule. The Grand Palace, usually a place of carefully orchestrated ceremonies and subtle political maneuvering, had descended into chaos as noble houses argued openly in the throne room. "The humans were supposed to be primitive," Lord Vexcar shouted, his faceplates flushing deep purple with rage. "Your intelligence services assured us they posed no threat." The Emperor's grip tightened on his ceremonial staff. "My intelligence services relied on information from your house's trade missions, Lord Vexcar. Or have you forgotten the glowing reports your son sent before his current predicament. The mention of Commander Vexenar, now a prisoner of the humans and awaiting trial for the death of Lily Mason, silenced the angry lord temporarily. Imperial strategist Corvex, one of the few who had counseled caution in dealing with humans, stepped forward. Your Majesty, the outer systems are in open rebellion. The Nelvari have provided the humans with our defense codes. 3 fleet groups have surrendered rather than fight. We must consider negotiation. Negotiate with barbarians? Another noble hissed. Impossible. These barbarians have outmaneuvered us at every turn, Corvex replied coolly. They have technologies we thought impossible. They have formed alliances with species we've controlled for millennia, and they've done it all while minimizing civilian casualties, something that has not escaped the notice of our own population. The Emperor rose from his throne, silencing the room. Bring me options, not complaints. I want a plan to turn this war around within 3 cycles, or there will be new faces in this chamber. As the nobles bowed and hurried away, Corvex remained. Your Majesty, there is something else you should know. Our deep cover agents on Earth have finally discovered how they kept their military buildup hidden from us all these years. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Tell me. It appears they built everything in plain sight, Corvex explained. Those passenger ships we thought were primitive, warships with detachable civilian modules, the mining operations in their asteroid belt, shipyards and weapons factories, the simple defense satellites, actually advanced weapons platforms with stealth technology. But our scans were shown exactly what the humans wanted us to see. They've been developing sensor fooling technology since before they encountered us. It was originally designed to hide from each other during their earlier conflicts. For the first time, real fear showed in the Emperor's eyes. What kind of species prepares so thoroughly for a war they hope to avoid? Meanwhile, aboard the Earth, flagship Retribution, Admiral Wright reviewed the latest intelligence with her senior staff. The holographic map of the galaxy showed Earth forces advancing on multiple fronts, with Imperial resistance crumbling in most sectors. The Nelvari uprising on Sector 87 has secured the shipyards, General Harris reported. They're requesting technical assistance to convert the facilities for their own defense. Send them what they need, Wright ordered. Any word from the Krell? The Krell were another subject species of the Empire, physiologically suited for heavy industrial work and treated as little more than slaves by the Zalthori. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez pulled up a new report on his screen. The Krell workers on Magnos III have taken control of the production facilities. They're asking for recognition as an independent state after the war. Add them to the list for the settlement conference, Wright said. Make sure they know we support their independence. Dr. Cooper, who had been working closely with the various alien species joining the human cause, spoke up. Admiral, there's growing concern among our allies about what happens after we win. They fear we'll simply replace the Empire as the dominant power. Wright considered this. A fair concern. Draft a formal declaration of principles that we can send to all allied species. Make it clear that Earth seeks partnership, not domination. As the meeting concluded, Wright received a priority communication from Major Miller, whose special operations team had been tracking Imperial movements near the Orion Nebula. Admiral, we've intercepted something big, Miller reported, his face grim on the screen. The Empire wasn't just conducting a routine inspection on New Hope when Lily Mason was killed. They were looking for something specific. Wright leaned forward. What? Evidence suggests they believed we were developing some kind of superweapon there. A planet killer. That's absurd, Wright said. New Hope is an agricultural colony. There's nothing there but farms and a small research station studying local plant life. That's what I thought too, Miller agreed. But we captured an Imperial intelligence officer who claims they received reliable information about weapons development. Someone wanted them to hit that colony, Admiral. Someone wanted this war. This revelation added a disturbing new dimension to the conflict. Had someone manipulated events to trigger a human Imperial war? If so, who stood to gain? Wright ordered a full investigation, but the war continued to accelerate. Earth forces, now bolstered by allies from across the galaxy, pushed ever closer to the Imperial core worlds. On Nexus Prime, an important Imperial industrial center, Lieutenant Sharon Diaz led Earth ground forces in securing key facilities. Her team discovered massive data archives in an Imperial intelligence center. "There's too much to process here," she reported to headquarters, "but we've found files specifically about Earth going back decades. They've been studying us intensively." Data specialist on her team, Sergeant Joe Winters, cracked the encryption on one of the high-priority files. "Lieutenant, you need to see this." The file contained surveillance reports of New Hope Colony, focusing specifically on the Mason family's farm. Images showed Imperial probes taking soil samples and scanning the area months before the inspection that led to Lily's death. "They were looking for something under their farm," Winters explained, pointing to anomalous readings in the data. "Something giving off unusual energy signatures." "Did they find it?" Diaz asked. "No. The readings were being caused by a natural mineral deposit with unusual properties, nothing artificial or dangerous." Diaz's face hardened. "So Lily died because some Imperial scientist couldn't tell the difference between a natural mineral deposit and a weapon." "Looks that way," Winters confirmed. "But there's more. Look at this authorization code." The code attached to the surveillance operation traced back to a surprising source. Lord Vexikar, father of Commander Vexnar, who had led the fatal inspection. This wasn't a routine patrol gone wrong, Diaz realized. This was a planned operation, specifically targeting New Hope. But why? What did they think was there? She transmitted the full data package to Earth Command for analysis. Within hours, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The Mason family's farm had been built over an ancient site containing remnants of technology from a long-extinct alien civilization. The minerals in the soil distorted scans, creating readings that Imperial scientists had misinterpreted as signs of weapons development. Admiral Wright called an emergency meeting of her senior staff when the analysis was complete. "It appears we weren't the only ones keeping secrets," she told them. "The Empire has been searching for remnants of the precursor civilization for centuries. They thought they'd found some on New Hope. So Lily's death wasn't a random act of brutality," General Harris said slowly. "It was part of a deliberate operation." "Which makes it even more unforgivable," Wright said. "I want this information sent to all our forces and allies. Everyone needs to understand what we're fighting against." The news galvanized Earth troops and allies. The war had begun as a response to one child's death, but now it had become a struggle against a system that would sacrifice innocent lives in pursuit of power. On New Hope Colony, now heavily fortified, as a forward Earth base, Greg and Maria Mason were shown the evidence about why their daughter had died. The revelation provided no comfort, only a deeper sense of loss and anger. "What was under our farm?" Greg asked Major Miller, who had returned briefly to coordinate defense upgrades. "Nothing of military value," Miller assured him. "Just artifacts, from a species that died out long ago. Their technology was advanced, but not weapons-related. The Empire just jumped to conclusions because they're obsessed with finding precursor weapons." Maria Mason, who had barely spoken since Lily's funeral, suddenly found her voice. "And for that mistake, my daughter is gone." "Yes," Miller said simply. "And that's why we're making sure the Empire can never do this again." The Masons made a decision that surprised many. Instead of retreating into their grief, they established a field hospital on New Hope that would treat wounded from both sides of the conflict. "Lily always wanted to help people," Maria explained as the facility opened. "This is what she would have wanted." The Mason Memorial Hospital became known throughout the war zone as a place where anyone, human or alien, friend or former enemy, could receive care without judgment. The sight of Lily's parents tending to injured Imperial soldiers made a powerful impression on everyone who witnessed it. 1 year after Lily Mason's death, representatives from over 300 worlds gathered on the neutral space station Concordia. Built eons ago by the same precursor civilization that had inadvertently led to the war, the massive ring-shaped structure had been chosen as the site for the most important peace conference in galactic history. Admiral Susan Wright, who had commanded Earth's forces throughout the conflict, stood at the viewport of her shuttle as it approached the station. Though she still wore her uniform, she was now serving as Earth's chief diplomat rather than its military leader. "Nervous?" asked Dr. Michelle Cooper, who had become one of Wright's closest advisors after her success in building alliances with former Imperial subject species. "A little," Wright admitted. "Fighting a war is straightforward compared to building a peace." Cooper nodded. "But that's why we fought. Not just to end the Empire, but to create something better." The shuttle docked at Concordia's main bay, where a reception committee waited. Representatives from a dozen species stood together: humans, Nelvari, Krell, Saurians, and others who had fought alongside Earth. Even more surprising was the presence of Zalthori civilians, members of the newly formed provisional government that had replaced the Imperial system. The conference opened with a moment of silence for all who had died in the conflict. Then, President Hayes of Earth addressed the gathering. "We come together not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals seeking a just and lasting peace," he began. "A year ago, a child named Lily Mason was killed by forces operating under Imperial authority. That single act of violence revealed the true nature of a system built on domination and fear. Today we have the opportunity to replace that system with one built on cooperation and respect." Over the next 2 weeks, delegates worked to create the framework for the new Galactic Cooperative. Unlike the Empire's hierarchical structure, the EDI Cooperative would be governed by a council where all member worlds had equal representation. Military forces would be primarily defensive and controlled by civilian oversight. Trade would flow freely between worlds, with no species able to monopolize critical resources. Not everyone was pleased with the new arrangements. Some human military leaders felt Earth deserved a special position after leading the fight against the Empire. Some former Imperial officials argued for maintaining certain aspects of the old system, and some subject species wanted revenge against their former Zalthori rulers. "This is taking too long," General Harris complained during a private meeting with Earth's delegation. "We won the war. We should be setting the terms." "And then what?" Wright asked him. "We become the new empire? We didn't fight for domination, Peter. We fought for justice." "The general does have a point about efficiency," one of the political advisors noted. "Some of these alien species don't seem to understand the concept of deadlines." Dr. Cooper, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up. "They understand perfectly, but they've been ruled by others for centuries. Now they want to make sure their voices are heard. That's worth taking time for." In the end, patience prevailed. After 16 days of intense negotiation, the charter of the Galactic Cooperative was signed by representatives from all participating worlds, including Earth and the reformed Zalthori government. A parallel process had been taking place during the peace conference, the war crimes trials. An international tribunal with judges from multiple species heard evidence about atrocities committed during the Empire's long rule and in the recent conflict. The most closely watched case was that of Commander Vexnar and his father, Lord Vexcar, charged directly with responsibility for Lily Mason's death. The evidence presented was damning. Lord Vexcar had ordered the inspection of New Hope, based on faulty intelligence about precursor technology, and had specifically instructed his son to use whatever force necessary to find what they believed was hidden there. The Masons attended the trial, sitting quietly in the observation area each day. They did not speak to the media or make statements. They simply watched as the circumstances of their daughter's death were examined in clinical detail. When the verdict came, it was unanimous: guilty on all counts. The sentence was not death. The new cooperative had abolished capital punishment, but life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. After the sentencing, Lord Vexcar asked to speak with Greg and Maria Mason privately. Against the advice of security personnel, they agreed. The meeting took place in a small room adjacent to the courtroom. Vexcar, stripped of his noble trappings and wearing a simple prisoner's jumpsuit, seemed smaller somehow. "I wish to tell you," he said through a translator, "that not a day passes when I do not regret the orders I gave. My ambition and fear led to your child's death. No apology can ever be sufficient, but I offer one nonetheless. The Masons listened in silence. Then Maria spoke, her voice steady. "We didn't come here for your apology. We came to see justice done. Not vengeance, but justice. There's a difference." Greg added, "Our daughter can't come back, nothing can change that. But the system that treated her life as worthless is gone. That matters." When they left, Vec's car remained seated, head bowed. According to the guards, he did not move for hours. Back, on New Hope Colony, life was returning to something resembling normalcy. The defensive installations were being converted to civilian use. The Mason Memorial Hospital had expanded, becoming a teaching facility where medical professionals from multiple species trained together. Major John Miller, now retired from military service, had taken a position as the colony's liaison to the Galactic Cooperative. He frequently visited the small monument that had been erected where Lily died, a simple stone marker with her name and the words, "For one child, a galaxy changed." On the one-year anniversary of her death, a ceremony was held at the monument. People from across New Hope Colony attended, along with visitors from Earth and other worlds. Admiral Wright, who had specifically requested to attend, stood with the Masons as they placed flowers at the base of the marker. "I wanted you to know," Wright told them quietly, "that every decision I made during the war I thought about Lily, about what kind of galaxy she should have lived to see." Maria Mason took the Admiral's hand. "She would have liked you, Susan. She always stood up to bullies even when they were bigger than her." After the ceremony, Sam Mason, now 9 years old, approached Wright with something clutched in his small hand. "My sister found this the morning she died," he said, holding out a smooth stone with flecks of silver running through it. "She was going to give it to me, but she never got the chance. I want you to have it." Wright knelt down to his level. "Are you sure, Sam? It's a very special gift." He nodded solemnly. "Mom says you made sure what happened to Lily didn't happen to other kids. She would have wanted you to have it." The Admiral accepted the small stone, tucking it carefully into her pocket. "Thank you. I'll keep it with me always." As the gathering dispersed, President Hayes pulled Wright aside. "The Cooperative Council has made their decision about the leadership position." The newly formed council had been debating who should serve as the first coordinator of the Galactic Cooperative, a position that would guide the fledgling organization through its crucial early years. "And?" Wright asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "They want you, Susan," Hayes confirmed. "Every species voted in favor, even the Zalthori." Wright looked back at the monument, where the Masons were still standing together. "I'll need to think about it." "Of course," Hayes said, "but not for too long. There's a lot of work to do." That evening, Wright walked alone in the fields outside the settlement, the small stone from Sam Mason in her hand. The war had been necessary, she had no doubts about that. But war was destruction, even when fought for the most noble causes. Now came the harder part, building something that would last. Her communicator beeped, indicating an incoming transmission from Captain Frank Bennett, who had been overseeing the conversion of former Imperial military facilities. "Admiral," Bennett reported, "the Nelvari delegation is requesting your input on the proposed education exchange program, and the Saurians want to discuss joint security arrangements for the outer systems." Wright smiled slightly. "Tell them I'll meet with both tomorrow, and Frank, I'm not an admiral anymore, just Susan." "Yes, Admiral," Bennett replied, the smile evident in his voice. "Anything else?" Wright looked up at the stars, thinking of all the worlds now working together, species that had been enemies just months before now cautiously building trust. "Yes," she said finally. "Tell them I accept the position, but I have one condition." "What's that?" "The cooperative headquarters needs to be here on New Hope, where it all began." 3 months later, the inaugural ceremony of the Galactic Cooperative took place in the newly constructed Forum building on New Hope. Representatives from hundreds of worlds attended, along with ordinary citizens from across the galaxy. Susan Wright, dressed in the simple blue uniform of the Cooperative rather than her military attire, took the oath of office as the first coordinator. In her acceptance speech, She focused not on the war that had brought them to this point, but on the future they were building together.